We're ready to place the front and back and sleeve patterns onto our fabric now. Now for the front bodice, we need to place the pattern on the fold. So what I've got here is just a lightweight fabric, and this is the right side and that's the wrong side. So I've just folded that in half with the fold facing me, and place my pattern over the top. Now today I'm not showing you how to place your pattern onto pieces of fabric with a grain line or how to stop wastage. I'm just showing you how to put this block pattern together and add your seam allowances. So pin this down with this Vilene. I don't really need to pin it down, but with your patterns it's a good idea to pin them down when you're using paper. This is why the Vilene's so good, because it doesn't actually go far. Okay, now we need to incorporate or add the seam allowance. Now I'm not putting any facings on for the collar at the moment, so I don't need to worry about that, and I don't need to worry about the hem because all we're doing is testing this pattern. We need a seam allowance on the shoulder, we need a seam allowance in the armhole because we're going to put one sleeve in, and we need a seam allowance on the side seam. So wherever you're adding fabric, that's where you need to add a seam allowance, or where you're joining fabric. I have a 5/8 inch seam allowance, or 1.5 centimeters, and I'm just going to place this along the edge of my pattern. So the red straight line there just goes along the edge of my pattern, and I'll make a mark straight along here. Hopefully I've left enough room. This is where your normal seam allowance would be, so it's okay, I'm going to make it. Normally you'd allow a little bit of extra room just at the top so that you can make sure that you've got enough room for your seam allowance. So that's my stitching line, and this is the seam allowance that we're using today. I personally like to have something a bit smaller. Now that we've added our seam allowance, we need to add our bust and waist darts. Now I like to use carb tracing paper or a dressmaker's tracing paper. You can get it in different colours, and there are lots of different brands. So we'll be using the tracing paper. And I'll go with the green today just so that we can see the lines better. Place the tracing paper on the facing onto the wrong side of your fabric. So this fabric here is my wrong side. I'm going to place one sheet facing down onto that, and just in between the pattern and the fabric, and the other piece is going onto the other wrong side of my fabric facing up. And with a tracing wheel, just mark your lines down on your bust dart. Just like that. And you can see the little dotted lines that I've got here, which are my darts. So I'll be able to line that up easily later on. Do the same thing for the waist. Now the back pattern, we've got two pieces that we need to cut out. This one's not on the fold. We've got the centre back here, which is where our zip will go. And we need to make sure we allow plenty of room to put the zip in. And we need to make sure we allow our seam allowances. Again, we're not adding any fabric to the hip line and we're not adding any fabric to the collar, so I'm not going to worry about a seam allowance for that. But we are joining the sleeve, the shoulder, a zip and the centre back seam and the side seam. And for the back we also need to add our waist dart. So this one's ready to cut out, and then we shall do our sleeve. Okay, we're ready for the sleeve. For the sleeve I need to open out my fabric. Now we're only going to do one sleeve, we're not doing both of them because we really only need to make sure that the sleeve fits into your garment. And of course we'd normally be making sure that our sleeve is cut out on the correct grain line. Pin this one down. So you can see with paper it's a little bit more difficult to work with. It's a bit slippery on the fabric. Now remember we've got the back of the sleeve and the front of the sleeve with a single marking and the double marking on the back there. We don't need to worry about the hem. In fact, I don't even need to make the sleeve as long as this. I might as well save a little bit of fabric and I'll just make this a bit shorter. Because it's all about the sleeve cap. That's all we need to know. We need to make sure that the sleeve is going to fit in the garment. So, add our seam allowance. All the way around. And we can connect the dots. And we can cut that out. Before we cut that out, what we want to do is remember where the front and back of the sleeve are. So we've got the center of the sleeve there, and we've got the front sleeve and the back sleeve. Now that we have our three pattern pieces ready, we can assemble the pattern. So what I've got is two back pieces, one front bodice piece on the fold, and one sleeve. So what we need to do is attach the shoulder seams. Actually, the first thing we need to do is close up the darts. Now, I'm not going to show you how to close up darts on this pattern because I'm assuming that you all know how to do that already, but I will actually do a video separately so that if you need to know how to do that, I'll close up some darts for you on another video, one that you'll actually be able to see the print better. So I'm going to go and close up these darts and stitch that down. So this is the front bodice section. This is the waist dart closed and the bust dart closed. And we've got the same for our back, our 2 back pieces. That's the side seam with the armhole edge here. And the other one as well. So our darts have just been closed up. Now, to put them together, we want to join them at the shoulder and we want to have right sides facing. So we want the outside and the outside away from each other, and we're just going to join that at the shoulder. Starting at the armhole edge and working our way across. Just pin that in place there. Do the same for the other one. And we can stitch the shoulder seams closed. And we're going to leave the side seams open and the back seam open just for the now. There's our shoulder seam attached to the bodice with our 5/8 inch seam allowance. And what we're going to do now, before we sew up the side seam and put the sleeve in, is just put the zip on the back. Now we just use any zip, and it's only to test the fabric, the pattern. So I'm going to put a zip in from the top down to around about here and then just close that up. Okay, the zip has been put in and I'm going to put the sleeve in now. And remember, I'm only doing one sleeve. Now that the sleeve is in, we can go and close up the side seam. So close up your side seam all the way up to the armhole and straight across to the end of your sleeve. Okay, there we go. We've got our sleeve in. We can clip the curves just on the sleeve so that we can make sure it sits better. Ideally, you'll go and iron this or give it a good press. We're not going to bother with that because we're just going to try it on and see how it fits. Okay, so here we go. We've got our bodice pattern completely done and one sleeve. All right, so you can see I've not tweaked this in any way at all. What you saw me draw up on the wall before and the measurements that you saw me take, these are exactly as I've drawn them out and sewn them out with the 5/8 inch seam allowance. So there we go. I'm pretty happy with that. So there is our front bodice pattern. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd love to know how you go with yours. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave a message in comments down below. As I said at the beginning of this video, I will put a chart in the comments down the bottom or in the description down below so that you can actually print this out yourself and put your own measurements in there and then just follow the instructions on the formula sheet. and then follow the instructions for the video. Once you've done this a couple of times, you'll know it by heart. You won't need to revert back to the video. But look, I'm pretty happy with this. It fits my body perfectly. I don't need to do any tweaking to it. It has cost me nothing more than a little bit of fabric. I didn't need to go and buy any expensive pattern drafting systems or software programs. This is all just done by myself using the measurements that I've taken myself. So I'll probably get a little bit of a better fit if I got somebody else to take the measurements for me, providing they took them the right way. But look, this is actually really good the way it is. I'm ready now to go and put all my design features in and make whatever it is that I want to make, coming up in future videos. Let me know how you go and what you think of this video. Catch you next time. Oh, and don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you won't miss out on anything else that I bring out for you.